Nigeria is a country which is blessed with a lot of human and natural resources. On a daily basis, we talk about the talented ones, leaving the shores of this great country to go and lend their wealth of experience to other developed climes. Our focus today is on an individual who, rather than lending his wealth of knowledge and experience to the developed countries, has decided to come back home to come and impact the society as best possible. Now, if history serves me right, the very first kidney transplant in Nigeria was carried out in Lagos. And of course, the very first one in the Federal Capital Territory, the city of Abuja, was done on the 14th of December, the year 2012. Well, my guest on the program today is somebody who was involved, who actually performed that particular feat. The program is Executive Discourse, and my name is Ololade Adeniji. Executive Discourse, of course, is coming to you on the network service of the NTA, and this program streams live on our mobile app, visiontv.co.uk. My guest on the program today is somebody who's really very busy. He's gotten his hands in a lot of surgeries because he is a transplant surgeon, and I've only just been able to get him to come out of the theater to lend me a few hours so that we can have this conversation. Hello, doctor.
Hello.
How are you?
So welcome. I'm
yes.
fine, thank you.
Thank you very much too,
yes.
and thank you for giving us this few hours of your
welcome.
time.
You're welcome.
Thank
Please
you.
come through.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, you have such a simple, lovely place here.
Thank you.
Yes, and it's a wonder that so much is coming out of here.
Oh, wait, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so size isn't everything.
It isn't everything, and I hope we'll get to see some more of what you do.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Please come through.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Once again, the program is Executive Discourse, coming to you on the network service of the NTA. My name is Ololade Adeniji. You've seen my guest out there, but you're yet to meet him. Well, apart from the fact that I told you he's a transplant surgeon, I'm sure you don't know anything more about him. Well, this is a man who has been involved in several kidney transplants, and I make bold to say that in this country. Apart from kidney transplants, he's also been involved in a lot of open heart surgeries. Yes, you heard me right. Open heart surgeries. These are possible in Nigeria. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you as my guest today on the program, Dr. Elijah Maina. He is the Chief Medical Director and CEO of Caroline Hospital. Doctor, it's good to have you here with us.
Good to have you too. Thank you.
I mean, I was able to drag you out of the theater, and somebody was saying to me, "How did you manage that?"
Well, your charm and everything, that's
oh
what got
boy,
me out.
Okay.
Yes, so
okay, now my head is beginning to swell like Ijebu guy. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're a transplant surgeon. You're a surgeon, a transplant surgeon,
Sure.
and you've done so much. But I must ask you,
Sure.
why did you decide to go into transplantation?
Okay. Well, I started out being a general surgeon. I am a general surgeon. Initially, my training was in the UK, and I was fortunate enough to have a colleague of mine whom I've known now for over 30 years. We studied together. We did our fellowship together in England, and I stayed back in England. He went off to America to the Mayo Clinic, and later subspecialized into kidney transplantation. On returning to the UK, we joined our hands together. He had done, together with his professor, the first double hand transplant in the world. That was fantastic. And
Double hand, you said?
double hand transplant in the world. He did it with his professor in France. And on coming back, he encouraged me and really pulled me and drew my interest into kidney transplantation, which he'd been doing. He's a professor of kidney and pancreas transplant surgery, and that's how I got involved. This is several years ago now, and we then decided, why not do it in Nigeria? It is possible. I looked at the instruments they had, I looked at the equipment they had, and I thought, this is not beyond us in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria, we've been going through difficult times, both economic and various other ways. But I just looked and I said, look, this is something, it's a can-do mentality. You've got to be able to look at a thing and say, I have the belief, I have the faith, and we can get this done.
You believed it could be done in Nigeria.
Yes.
But you were coming from a society, I mean, having trained out there in the UK, you were coming from a society where things are available.
Yeah.
And almost all the time, things work.
Absolutely.
Coming to a society where it's a struggle every day to even get some basic necessities of life.
Absolutely.
What was it that gave you that courage that it could be done here?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd always, throughout my training and my work in the UK, I'd always wanted to come back home. And I wanted to come back home to make a difference, to provide a service perhaps that is not commonly available. Now, you talk about being in a place where everything is available, light being one of the most important, water being, as basic as that. But we overcame that. It took a number of years. It was a slow start for us here in Nigeria. But with the belief and with getting people of like minds, we were able to set up this program. We got the instrumentation. We got, of course, a few innovative things because we had to have standby generators, make sure we had enough diesel, had to have extra sources of water. These are just the basic things. But the instruments, we got everything that you would get in the UK today. You know, from the anesthetic machines to the ICU to the instruments that we use. And we were fortunate. By the 14th of December 2012, we did our first kidney transplant in Abuja. Of course, the first kidney transplants in Nigeria had already been started in Lagos and then also in Kano. So you must give them that. I mean, I think that great credit, and that encouraged me even to do more. So we got that started, 2012, and here, more than 10 years on, we're still doing kidney transplants, and I must say with a great degree of success. Yes.
That first transplant that you did here in Nigeria, what did it do for you?
What did it do for me?
Yes.
It almost gave me a heart attack. I can tell you that, because the reason is I literally had to micromanage everything. This is a new thing coming on into Nigeria. There was no way I would expect my colleagues, junior and senior, to be able to put everything together. So from switchers to the kind of of solution we used to prepare the skin to the diathermy machine and everything, I was running up and down and making sure that it got through.
Oh my.
But thank God we were able to do it. We did it successfully, and in fact, at that time, NTA even covered it for us. And what's interesting about Nigeria is that even some medical doctors in Abuja didn't believe that we did it. They thought we recorded this thing in England and then came and presented it.
Presented it here in Nigeria.
Yes. So after a few runs and when we later on got fully into the business, people now started believing that we were actually doing kidney transplants here and so on. My colleague, I must say, his name is Professor Nadi Hakim, has been a great support. He has been our lead surgeon because he's done over 2,000 kidney transplants.
Right.
And one thing I promised myself is that if we were going to do kidney transplants in Nigeria, we must offer the best, the equivalent. And and the time I'm sure will come when you meet my colleague, he would tell you that apart from maybe the building, which will look nicer in England, every other thing that we have for the transplant is the same, exactly the same as in England.
In England.
Yeah, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because we've been able to showcase ourselves where, as you can see, we're a small unit here, but I've been moving about over the past 10 years, so we've done kidney transplants in several places. But what we've done is we've built capacity and we've maintained the same group, from the anesthetist to the peri-op nurses to the nephrologists to the surgeons that have been doing this.
The same group?
The same group.
How have you been able to do that? I mean, you guys are coming from different places.
From different places, absolutely. But with, first of all, the enthusiasm. You get people of like minds. You get people that are ready to dream with you, to carry on with your vision. And I've been very fortunate in having very, very good people. I think apart from my colleague who is a professor of transplant, every other person is a Nigerian. And I am really proud of that. And these are people that we can wake up tomorrow and say we're doing a transplant and they're ready.
And they're ready for you.
Yeah.
Now, you, just as you said a few minutes earlier, I mean, you've had cause to move around quite a bit. In the course of this 10 years that you've been doing kidney transplantation in Nigeria. I know that at some point you were at the National Hospital.
True, yes.
And I was expecting that perhaps you would have started the kidney transplants there. What happened?
Well, the intention when I went to National Hospital was to actually start what we call vascular access. First of all, for patients
for dialysis
and so on. And we started off that, but things were moving a little bit too slow for me. I really wanted to get on and start the kidney transplantation. Let's just say I didn't get the sort of support that I wanted, that I needed, to get this done. But fortunately, as time went on, I didn't stop, I didn't relent. And I was very fortunate. After a short stint outside Abuja, I came back and I was made the CMD at Garki Hospital. And that is when I was able to showcase that we could do a lot more than even kidney transplants. Because there, whilst I was there, we also started doing open heart surgery.
Yes, and that brings me to the open heart surgeries. I mean, you're taking on surgeries. Yes, every surgery comes with a measure of risk.
Absolutely.
But you're taking on transplants and surgeries that are high risk.
Absolutely.
Very, very high risk. And which, even for me, I didn't think were possible in Nigeria because we always hear of people going out of the country to the UK, the US, India, and go to get these things done.
Sure.
How have you been able to achieve this? And I mean, you seem to have even done many more open heart surgeries than kidney transplants.
That's true. Whilst I was in Garki, what it was able to get together people of like minds and people with the necessary experience. I'm so, again, very proud to say that in Nigeria, we were able to, in Garki, for the open heart surgeries, every single person, from the cleaner to the top surgeon, were all Nigerians. A few of the Nigerians had been in the diaspora like me. Some were still there. We got a group from Houston, Texas, all Nigerian. We got nurses coming in from the UK, all Nigerians. And the perfusionists, the anesthetists, every single person was a Nigerian. And I think that is a great testimony. And the risk was reduced for the fact that these people had been doing cardiac surgeries, open heart surgeries elsewhere in the developed world. So the same challenges that we faced with kidney transplants, we were able to overcome because we could project and see what it was that we required, and we were able to achieve it. And I was really, it gave me a lot of satisfaction. Again, you know, it was very sweaty because for everything we had to micromanage what we have, but we were able to succeed, and I'm very, very glad about it. What I just feel bad about is that since I left Garki, none of these things have happened again.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So again, now that we've opened up this small center, we are working on going back to open heart surgeries. For the kidney transplants, we've continued here, and we've done almost 100, you know, over the 3 years or so that we've been here. Yeah, and we're planning, you know, to start of open heart surgeries. Apart from that, I do a lot of what we call oncological surgeries. That's
for cancer patients.
For cancer patients, particularly breast and colon cancers, and we've even done some recently as well.
Okay. Now I know that yes, you have a sense of fulfillment doing what you do. You obviously enjoy and love what you do.
Yes.
But I'll still come back to operating in these climes where we are, coming from where you were and here. Yes, power is a major challenge, but I know that you must have also experienced some other major challenges along the way. Yes. Can you take us through some of them?
Oh, yes. The biggest challenge is disbelief from colleagues and from some of our potential patients. Disbelief in, like you said earlier, you didn't realize that these things could be done in the country. But we had to overcome that by making sure that we selected our patients carefully, did them successfully. I think 90% of the patients that we're seeing here in this hospital have come by word of mouth. Mainly from patients that we've done before that were successful. They've gone back to say, oh, we're doing this. And till today, I get phone calls saying, do you really do kidney transplants here? Are you sure? Somebody actually flew in from another part of the country just to come and see what our facility was like. He looked, he said, in this small place. And then at the end of the day, luckily, he was able to see a few of the patients that were done before, that were done successful kidney transplants on. They discussed with them, and they finally came around to seeing us. So that is one thing, disbelief. The other major challenge we're facing now, I'm sure you'd believe it, is simple diesel. My God, if we're doing any of these surgeries, we don't take a risk. Even if we've got public power supply on, we have 3 standby generators, making sure that they work, making sure that they are on as soon as there's a difficulty. We switch straight on, to alternative energy. But diesel has been, should I say, quote, killing us because of the prices. And it's made it very difficult to pass on the price to our patients as well. Yes, because I was just going to ask how affordable,
but we'll get to that, when you're done with the challenges.
Sure. So challenges such as that exist. Third challenge, of course, now is that we had a lot of young people encouraged them, taught them, you know, all the steps that are required and the various sections in, say, transplant surgery. And then suddenly you hear somebody will come and say, sorry, sir, I'm going off to Canada, I'm going off to the UK, I'm going off to America, brain drain. But what do we do? I suspected this was going to happen long before it started snowballing like this. So what we did is this. A lot of the heads, like anesthesia, peri-op nursing, that's theater nurses and so on, we got people that were retired that had no interest in leaving the country. So we get the younger ones to come in, we train them. If they say they're going, we just get another group and we start. That's the only way you can do it until things improve generally in the country, and then we start getting a reverse in people coming back. Returning and joining us. But we won't stop. The last challenge, of course, is patients being able to pay for transplants. Transplants are expensive. If you're going to do it right, both from the pre-transplant investigation to the actual transplants themselves.
And even the post-transplant.
And post-transplant. That's right. So many people, you hardly find a single individual that will come and say, I'm paying from my pocket. So people go through churches, mosques, they go through NGOs, they go through. So it is really, really tough for a lot of our patients. But we've refused to come down with our standards. We've tried to be very reasonable in terms of our costing, and you won't believe it. For any transplant that we do, and we have a slight complication that keeps the patient on longer, that wipes out any profit at all that we have to do. But we are determined to carry on doing this when we're sure a day will come the government will help. More foundations, when they know that we're serious about what we're doing, will help. Private individuals will help.
Possibly health insurance.
And health insurance, hopefully, will come in. Because of the complexities of these, health insurance usually doesn't cover transplants, even in America. Very, very few of them do.
But at least the part of, the process.
The process, If at least the government, foundations, NGOs, churches, mosques are able to help, patients go through this, that will help us do a lot more for our patients. Because at the end of the day, dialysis is not the solution. Once a patient is qualified, by the time you dialyze for a year and a half, you spend the amount of money you would have used for a kidney transplant.
Now, you talked about dialysis. I just want to ask you a question that has always, been on my mind. When we talk about dialysis and then we talk about kidney transplant, some people are of the opinion that somehow, rather than helping to improve the quality of life of the patient, that dialysis, in a way, actually tends to reduce the quality of life. Maybe psychologically or otherwise, I don't know. Can you tell me about this?
Very true. First of all, to dialyze properly, on average, a patient needs to dialyze 3 times a week. 3 times a week. And it is not cheap. The lowest you will get at the moment in terms of cost will be about 25,000 naira. Per session. Most places are 35,000 naira. And imagine doing that 3 times.
So in a week, a minimum of 75,000 naira.
Absolutely, which is very, very tough for a lot of patients. Secondly, the longer patients stay on dialysis, the more there are complications that can arise, a lot of them, from what I would say metabolic complications to even complications of their lines. Recently, I had a patient, infections that they can get, and so on. And in terms of lifestyle, what kind of a lifestyle will you have? 3 times a week, you're coming into hospital, you're staying for a minimum of 4 hours.
And you're also carrying...
You're carrying either a catheter or you've had, an AV fistula created. that is really not the best in life. There are some people, either because of age or from what we call comorbidities, that is other serious illnesses, are not fit enough for a transplant. So those ones remain on dialysis and so on, which is very hurtful. But gradually, the vast majority of people do require transplants. And this is something that we really, really need in this country. If you see the number of people that are coming from all the parts of the country, where there's no region in this country that we haven't transplanted somebody. In other words, all the six geopolitical zones, we have a lot of cases.
You've talked about successful transplantations.
Sure.
But I also know that nothing is foolproof to the very letter.
Sure.
In the course of these transplants that you've done in Nigeria, what kind of challenges or setbacks have you recorded?
Right. Let me start with just saying that even when you're removing an appendix, that in itself can be a disaster. You can have complications that can even cause a patient to succumb. But with transplants, the complications, most of them surgical complications that they have, are usually within the first 2 weeks of their surgeries. And when they happen, you've got to be on your toes and must be ready to intervene immediately. It takes a lot of investigations. It takes a lot of being very astute as to picking up that something is going on, right, and intervene immediately. So complications do occur, and there's no place in this world, whether the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, the Cleveland Clinic, wherever in this world, that you don't get complications. The important thing is being able to recognize the complications and to intervene on time. Yes. And so we've had our fair share of complications and so on. The other form of complications are with drugs. We give drugs that immunosuppress the body because the body sees a strange object being put in the kidney. So you have to reduce the immunity. It wants to reject it. If you go off the medication, medications, by the way, are for life after a transplant. That's right, yeah. You start off with about 7-8 drugs, and then after about 3 months, if everything is going well, you're on about 3 drugs, but you have to remain on them for life. Unfortunately, some people, after having a successful transplant, go elsewhere, and they're told either by religious people or people that are not well informed that, oh, you've had your transplant, you're fine, stop your drugs. Sad. Yeah. Again, for those taking drugs, there are some complications that can arise due to the drugs that they're taking. Some of them are skin cancers, some of them infections because you're immunosuppressed, a number of issues like that. Again, we have a policy where once we've done our transplants, patients are seen free for the first 3 months.
Okay.
It's all
as a follow-up.
As a follow-up, because this is when you can pick up some of these early signs and then deal with them. And so it is a lot of hard work. And thankfully we have a number of nephrologists that are working with us. Like I said, people of like minds, because this is not something that you do on your own and say, as a surgeon, okay, I've done this, that's fine. No.
It's teamwork.
It's teamwork. It's multidisciplinary. And it's got to be teamwork where people are not fighting each other, but are rather complementing each other.
Working in sync.
And working in sync. That's, you've just got the right word there.
You talked about medications, and that is another thing that has always bothered me about kidney transplants, anywhere in the world really, and particularly in Nigeria. You and I know that these drugs could be pretty expensive, like the cyclosporins and the immunosuppressants, and they are not things that we can get over the counter just like that. So it also means that apart from it being expensive, it is not something that's just within your reach. How do you manage your patients with these medications? Because I know that they're not produced here in Nigeria.
True. Very true. Luckily, now that there are more transplant centers opening, now that we've had quite a number of patients that have even transplanted outside the country, people have devised means of getting access to these drugs, particularly from India, because let's face it, first, they manufacture the drugs, and secondly, they're cheaper.
Yes.
And we also get from Turkey, and for those that can afford it, they get from Europe. Let's just put it that way. It can also be tough. When we first started doing transplants, we didn't take into deep consideration the length, the number of drugs, the cost of the drugs that patients needed, and we struggled at the beginning.
Oh boy.
It got to a point we had to keep contributing amongst ourselves just to help, the patients to go through. So it's a big challenge, but again, the government can come in. The government can subsidize some of these drugs. Foundations can subsidize some of these drugs. Individuals can subsidize some of these drugs. And we believe that with time, as people realize how big the problem is, we might just get some interventions that will be able to help. And that would be great. Great for everybody.
Okay, let's move away from kidney transplants for now. Yes, because we've concentrated so much on that.
Sure.
And now let's come to heart.
Right.
Open heart surgery.
Right.
When you talk about open heart surgery, I've always wondered, okay, how do they do it? The human survives on the heart. You're supposed to be having a surgery. Are you going to kill the human at that time? So I'm asking you now as a layman, what exactly do we mean by open heart surgery?
Okay, great. Open heart surgery is the kind of surgery that requires that at some stage, whatever operation it is, whatever anomaly it is that they're correcting, you've got to stop the heart beating for a period of time before you play that. And how that has been achieved is you use something called a heart-lung machine. If you've got time,
you have to stop the heart beating.
That's right.
Okay. Boom, 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 boom. It has to stop.
That's right. And what you do is you now divert all the blood from the body into a machine, and that machine now acts as the heart and as the lung, as the name is, a heart-lung machine. And you actually see as the heart slowly comes to a stop. You actually give some medications to stop it.
Isn't that witchcraft?
It is not. It is not.
No, because you're telling me now that pumping effect of the heart, the boom, 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 you stop it, and the heart is there, it's not working.
That's right.
You divert all the blood in the body to
a machine,
which now acts as the heart.
That's right. And the lungs.
And the lungs. That is witchcraft now.
No. Let's put it another way. That is God's miracle. That is God's miracle.
God's miracle is the heart working in the body. Absolutely. But that one of you diverting to the machine.
Once you divert it, the interesting thing is that after the surgery is done, there's a process where the blood, you now start bringing the blood back into the body.
Into the body.
Yeah. And then you give some medications, and then you do a little shocking of the heart. And it's amazing how you see the heart start beating and beating. I think once we get started, we need to invite you to come and see this.
Definitely, I need to see because
and you know what?
Magic or witchcraft?
No, it is God's miracle.
It's God's miracle, you say.
Yes.
But I mean, as a human being, I'm finding these things particularly difficult to come to terms with, and to picture it in my head. Okay, well, so much for this conversation. Of course, the program is still Executive Discourse, and I'm being educated here by Dr. Maina. He's a man who is very passionate about what he does. I think we'll take a pause here and probably go to the theater. Let's see him in action. I mean, He's done several kidney transplants, but I think I should let you see something. Don't you think so? Well, let's go to the theater and see Dr. Minor in action. We'll be back. We must warn that some of the visuals you're about to see might be disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Go through my. Pick up, please. Pick up, please. More. And that's it. Thank you. Okay, you did very well. Ready?
You need that one here. Okay, great.
My goodness. The program is still executive discourse, and I'm sure that if you did not believe in anything before, right now you'll believe in God in one way or the other. And it's, the power of probably something or somebody stronger and more powerful than you and I. Haven't seen that procedure of the removal of the kidney and, the transplantation into the recipient. Dr. Minor, you do this almost on a daily basis. And so it's become part and parcel of you. Are you at any point in time in the process of carrying out the procedures, do you ever wonder if you're going to fail? Any fear of failure?
No, we put the fear of failure at the back of our minds because we're going with faith, we're going with the belief, and we're going with the intention of doing the best for our patients. We don't think of failure. It's not that complications can't arise, what you may call, a failure, they can. But that is something that we never put at the forefront of our minds. Our aim is for every single patient that comes to us, let us treat that patient like a brother, a sister, a mother, a father. That way our decisions are easy, that way the care is better. And that's what I keep drumming on to all our staff here. Treat everybody that comes, whether for transplant, for colon cancer removal, for dialysis, for even removal of your fingernails. Do it as though you're doing it to your own person. And God has been very faithful.
Faithful.
Yes.
Indeed, He has been.
Thank you.
This brings me to the post-operation care.
Sure.
Because I know that you have, a well-equipped intensive care unit there.
That's right.
Where you manage these patients. What does the post-operative care, what does it entail?
Right. First thing is patient comes out of theater, is taken to intensive care unit. The first thing we look out for is the urine. How much urine is coming out. Again, before that, making sure that the patient has recovered from his anesthesia, is stable, his blood pressure, various, what we call the
vitals
vitals. The vitals are normal. Then, of course, we start looking at the amount of urine, and there are protocols that we use. And we've been lucky, we have one of the nephrologists that we work with remotely, but extremely good. Is Harvard trained,
Okay.
and we're using the same protocol as the it's called the Beth Dickoners Hospital in Harvard. It's a Harvard affiliate hospital. So we follow more or less as a guide, the protocols that they use, because this is experience over many years. So the amount of fluid to give, how not to give too much or too little, the antibiotics, the anti-rejection drugs. So there's a whole list of items that we go through, and each of our nurses and our doctors have been trained. They've seen enough. If we have someone new, she or he would shadow those that are already, confident with it. And working that way, it has gone very well for us. It's gone very well. It's very tasking, because at every hour they're reporting the amount of urine being produced. That sometimes we do blood tests up to 4 times in a day. Check on this, check on the potassium, check on the calcium, check on various things, and then of course the vitals as well. And at this stage, the anesthetists are involved, the nephrologists are involved.
Even post-op?
Oh, even post-op, yeah. The anesthetist making sure that the patient's stable and out of pain. The nephrologist, of course, checking the medications, the urine output and so on. And then we as the surgeons on standby. If there's an issue and we're saying
that you need to take back,
that we need to take back, we would.
Back.
Luckily, it's not common that we need to do that. But if we need to, we will. Midnight or 2 a.m., we're there and we have to do it. So it's a tasking period, but very satisfying when you see the patient walk out and is well.
Conservatively, how long does the patient spend post-op before going home, before discharge?
Right. From our experience, what we've done is we give a period of 2 weeks. Most patients would be able to go home after a week, but a lot of our patients don't come from Abuja. And what we don't want to do is to let them go, fly, have a problem, and then have to rush back. It's never good. So we've factored it in that they stay with us for 2 weeks. Now, some, if they're really doing very well, we say you can go home, but they either have relatives here or they stay in a hotel if they want to.
Okay.
Some stay a little bit longer. If their urine output is not so good, their parameters are not so good, they stay out. But ultimately, like I said, we've also factored in that they will be followed up for 3 months free. Well, it's not free; it's part of the package that we've given, so that we make sure that they are fine. And a lot of the patients tend to just stay for the 3 months.
Oh, okay.
After we discharge them from hospital,
they stay in town.
Yeah, they stay with a relative, a friend. Some stay in a hotel, and they say we'll rather stay the 3 months, make sure we're okay before we go.
Because if they go out of the country, actually they will stay there.
That's right.
For that length of time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So,
in all your years as a surgeon, especially I'll go back to having practiced, outside the country and then coming back home to work. Have you ever had any cause for regrets?
The answer is no. And I'll tell you what. When I came back, initially I was jittery. I was jittery because, I'll give you an example. I was, a young patient came, needed his appendix out, and I said, fine, no problem, get the anesthetist. Everything was set up. I went in, about to remove the appendix, and I said, I need this particular suture.
And it wasn't available?
Nobody answered me.
Oh.
So I said, okay, maybe they didn't hear me. I repeated, I need this. Then somebody came and whispered, sorry, we don't have it. Long and short of it, it went okay. But I used sutures that were not really appropriate for that. But the patient
Proceeding.
did very well.
Thank God.
So that was one area that taught me, listen, it's not like England.
Don't assume everything is
Never
available.
assume. You sit down in England, they tell you it's an appendix, you just walk in, everything is there and you do. So gradually, we've been building our capacity, improving on the number of sutures and so on. But you asked me, did I regret? There were times I felt like just leaving the country, like just going back. Why? Personal reasons. You want to do things and somehow you cannot get what you want.
Done.
We would have started kidney transplants a long time ago, long time ago. But one issue or another, kept stopping us. But I kept being encouraged by friends, by family to say, listen, this is your own country. Why don't you just stay on, stick with it, do the best that you can, And I've not regretted it since then. It took a while for things to open up. It took a while for me to get the opportunity to demonstrate what I had been trained to do. But once that started, the greatest thing that you ever get is not so much how much you're paid for a surgery, but when an old lady comes to you and says, bless you, my son, or prays for you, that is more than any amount of money you can get. Now, I'm not saying in the UK or Europe they don't say that, but it's not as much. Right here, people are genuinely grateful, and it's something that you can't buy with money.
So the gratitude keeps you going.
It keeps me going. And the quest to do more, because we get to a point of, obviously we have to retire, and we're doing our best to train the younger ones to come up to do what we're doing, and we expect them to do even more than what we're doing. I'm expecting the next generation of surgeons that we have will be doing heart transplants, will be doing liver transplants. We haven't explored those areas yet. They are much more complex, of course, and so on, but it will come, it will happen in Nigeria. And I just say to those that are, keen to go out of the country, yes, I can understand with you. I can empathize with you. That you've tried hard, you've finished medical school, even to do your NYC is taking you 2 or 3 years. You've come out, the job doesn't pay well, you have to use KK and APEP to go home. I can understand that. But what I say to people is, if you can, always remember to come back and give.
Give back to the society.
Give back to the society. It is our own people. We have to sort out our own problems, and we will.
Definitely, yes, God help us, we will. And well, let's take some bit of testament, some testimony about this man. People who know him, some patients, and maybe a few colleagues in the industry. We'll be right back.
My relationship with Dr. Minor is very interesting. You see, I've known him for exactly 39 years. He is a very clever, very intelligent gentleman. I have to say, I'm very impressed by the way he organizes the transplants, meaning everything is ready. I mean, every single stitch is available, is prepared. He thinks in advance what we might require. Medication-wise, they're all available. The immunosuppression is available. That's what I like about him. I honestly feel and genuinely think that it's such a pity to have people go elsewhere, I'm not mentioning any country, elsewhere, and spend so much money on their trips and waiting to be, let's say a kidney transplant, waiting 2, 3, 4 months in a hotel for a center to do that transplant. All this is money spent abroad, whereas you can have it done next to your home and have exactly, if not better, management.
Dr. Elijah Minor, I've worked with him closely. I've been part and parcel of some few things he have done in the healthcare industry. If I have to use my own mind to describe Dr. Elijah Minor, he have it all in the health sector. He got the mind to care for people, whether rich or poor, with or without money. I've seen him spending a night on a chair where there is no bed because of a patient. So I have seen him driving from a distance to come to the facility at a very wrong hour because he wants to save somebody's life. I've seen him get into theater at a very wrong hour just because he wants to save somebody's life. So Dr. Elijah Minor, to me as a person, he's not only a mentor, but he's like a father. He have actually impacted a lot in terms of knowledge when we have to do things together.
Dr. Minor is a passionate surgeon. I know him about almost 9 years now, 2013, and is somebody that is very, very strict with medical ethics. When you work with him, you build that commitment in you to have that passion, and you want to see how much you can help people.
I know Mr. Minor personally, so I guess that is the main motivation. Yeah, you know somebody, a surgeon who cares, who's careful, and who is thorough, knows what he's doing, knows all the anatomy, and failure is minimal. We are quite lucky to have the kind of service we have in the UK for my son. He's been undergoing dialysis there, and he's very happy. We're pleased with the service. But you see, for patients who have chronic kidney disease and they start dialysis, it's just a matter of time for them to have transplant, kidney transplant. Now, that is the challenge in the UK because the waiting time is so long, 3 to 4 years, at least. Yeah. So we had to explore other options to avoid all these years of dialysis if possible. So when I found out here that we can get a good service, I said, well, why not take the opportunity to continue dialysis here, which he's doing here, and then eventually transplant surgery, which will be done pretty soon.
Yes, indeed, it is important, to believe in what you're passionate about and to follow it through, because that is what we have gathered from these individuals that we have spoken to. Imagine somebody bringing his son all the way from the UK just to have Dr. Minor be the one to operate on him and treat him. That's faith at, the highest level and human level as we possibly can get. As we begin to go on a home stretch on this conversation, Dr. Minor, you've been here, you've talked about your challenges and all whatnots. Looking at where we are at in Nigeria, there's been a lot of issues of brain drain. I mean, you have also experienced it where you train personnel, you train doctors, and the next thing you hear, they're going out of the country. How can we begin to keep our brains here in Nigeria and get others like you to return to this country?
Okay, so it's at different levels, but it starts with us. First of all, we've got to treat our juniors as colleagues. That is one thing. Because I tell you, a lot of young people, when you discuss with them when they finish from medical school, they tell you horror stories of how they were treated by their lecturers or how they were treated by their more senior colleagues. So the first thing is to make them feel comfortable, to be interested in their growth, in their academic growth, and so on. That is one aspect. The second aspect, of course, has to do more with the generality of the society. We have reached a stage where in virtually every profession, we don't trust each other. There are patients that will come to me and tell me, if it wasn't because so-and-so told me he had his operation by you, I wouldn't have come. I would have flown to Dubai. I would have.
Well,
gone
maybe
to
they have cause to, not trust, not believe.
That's right.
Because of experiences of others, and even possibly their own personal experiences.
Absolutely. So again, this boils down to us, isn't it? Being in hospitals, treating people well, treating people as human beings. There are places people go to, and I remember, I can give you several instances where just the behavior of one staff, and it may just be a cleaner, will cause the person will just say, look, I'm not coming here again. These people don't, they're not nice people. But again, to a large extent, what we need is good governance, good leadership. So many things will fall into place once there's good leadership. And I think the present day, we're working towards it, isn't it? There's no country in this world that is perfect.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maina. It's been really worth the while. And I want to believe that you've also enjoyed this conversation, so you're not feeling so bad that I took you away from the theatre.
No, not at all, not at all, not at all. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, I have been having this conversation, this really serious, deep conversation, but something that really impacts you and I. Remember that Executive Discourse every week celebrates trailblazers, people who are making their mark in their chosen fields of endeavor. And Dr. Elijah Maina is one individual who is doing so well. I mean, he's blazing the trail. Let's do this again, same time next week on the network service of the NTA. I am Ololade Adiniji Adele, and as I would always say, keep believing in Nigeria, because one day we will get it right. Bye for now.